In the UK, rent has increased by more than 30% in just the past 5 years, while wages have barely budged. Imagine spending over half your paycheck just to have a roof over your head, but still struggling to find a place you can truly afford. For millions, this is the reality of renting in today's UK. And it's getting worse. The housing crisis isn't just a headline, it's happening right now. And it's affecting everyone from young professionals to entire families. In some of the UK's biggest cities, like London and Manchester, the demand for rentals has soared to the point where renters are locked in bidding wars, fighting for the same property. But what's causing this madness? Why is renting becoming impossible for so many people? The answers might surprise you. And it's more than just high prices. Behind this growing crisis are some shocking factors that are making it harder than ever to secure a home. From the inflated property market to the lack of regulation on rent increases, there's a lot more at play than most people realise. If you think this crisis is just about rising rent, think again. The forces shaping the UK rental market are deeper, darker, and more complicated than you might have guessed. By the end of this video, you'll understand why renting in the UK is quickly becoming a distant dream for so many, and why it's time to face some hard truths. Number 1. Rising rent costs. In the last decade, rent prices in the UK have skyrocketed, and this is one of the most significant factors contributing to the housing crisis. Across major cities like London, Manchester, and Bristol, rent increases have far outpaced wage growth, making it increasingly difficult for renters to keep up. For example, recent data shows that rents in some areas have increased by more than 30% over the last 5 years. Meanwhile, average wages have barely moved, which means people are forced to spend a larger portion of their income on rent. Young professionals and families are feeling the pressure the most. In cities like London, a one-bedroom flat can easily cost more than £1,500 per month. This creates a huge financial strain on individuals who earn average salaries. The lack of affordable housing options in these urban areas forces many to compromise, either by taking on higher rent prices or by settling for smaller spaces. What makes this even more troubling is that renters have limited protection from rising costs. Unlike in other countries, the UK does not have strict rent controls, meaning landlords can increase rents at will, often in response to market demand. The combination of higher rent prices and stagnant wages leaves many renters trapped in an endless cycle of affordability challenges, where they're forced to cut back on other essentials just to meet their rent obligations. As a result, more people are being pushed to the brink of financial instability, with many feeling like home ownership is an unattainable dream. Number 2. Low availability of rental properties. The availability of rental properties in the UK has drastically decreased, making it even harder for people to find affordable places to live. Over the past several years, the rental market has been facing a significant shortage of available homes, particularly in high-demand urban areas. Cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham are seeing fewer homes listed for rent, and this has led to fierce competition among renters. One of the main reasons for this shortage is that many property owners are opting to sell their properties or convert them into short-term rentals through platforms like Airbnb. This shift removes properties from the long-term rental market, further narrowing the options available to regular renters. For example, in tourist-heavy cities, it's common to see entire apartment buildings converted into Airbnb units, leaving local residents struggling to find a home. Additionally, the construction of new rental properties has not kept pace with the increasing demand. Builders often focus on luxury developments that are far beyond the reach of most renters, further widening the gap between what's available and what people can afford. Affordable housing projects have been slow to materialise, and as a result, renters are left with fewer choices. In some cases, private landlords are also holding on to properties, unwilling to rent them out due to concerns over government regulations or low returns on investment. With so few properties on the market, many renters are forced into bidding wars, pushing rent prices even higher. This shortage of rental properties is a critical issue, especially for those who are looking for affordable stable housing in areas where demand is strongest. Number 3. High demand for rentals. The UK rental market is facing an overwhelming surge in demand for housing, and this is a key reason why renting is becoming increasingly difficult. Urbanisation has been a long-standing trend, with more and more people moving to cities in search of better job opportunities, improved amenities, and access to education. As a result, major cities like London, Bristol, and Manchester are seeing population growth at unprecedented rates. This influx of people has placed significant pressure on the available housing stock. Furthermore, immigration has also contributed to the growing demand for rental properties, as the UK remains a key destination for people from around the world seeking work or better living conditions. The number of potential renters continues to rise. According to recent data, nearly 400,000 people moved to the UK last year alone, increasing competition for limited rental options. The pandemic also played a role in changing rental patterns, with many people choosing to relocate from city centres to suburban or rural areas in search of more space and lower living costs. However, this shift has only intensified demand in already saturated markets, driving prices higher in areas that were once more affordable. With the demand for rentals soaring and the supply of properties remaining stagnant, renters are finding themselves caught in a fierce competition. This is further compounded by investment firms and corporate landlords who often dominate the market, driving up prices and making it harder for individuals to secure a place to live. As demand continues to outstrip supply, finding an affordable long-term rental property is becoming a nearly impossible task for many. Number 4. Wealthy investors dominating the market. One of the major reasons why renting in the UK is becoming increasingly difficult is the growing influence of wealthy investors and corporate landlords. In recent years, more and more property investors have entered the market, purchasing large numbers of residential properties not to live in, but to make a profit. These investors are often large firms, hedge funds, or international buyers with significant financial resources, and they are changing the dynamics of the rental market. Rather than renting out just 1 or 2 properties, many of these investors own entire blocks of flats or even entire buildings, which gives them significant control over rent prices. This means they can set higher rents without worrying about losing tenants because they have multiple units available. Corporate landlords, who operate at a much larger scale than individual landlords, often prioritize profit over tenants' needs, leading to price hikes and less flexible rental terms. Additionally, buy-to-let properties have become a popular investment strategy for those looking to grow their wealth. The combination of low interest rates and the potential for steady rental income makes investing in real estate attractive. However, this has led to a situation where the rental market is dominated by those who can afford to buy multiple properties, leaving everyday renters with fewer options. This shift in the market has resulted in inflated rents in many urban areas, making it harder for individuals or families to afford suitable accommodation. The focus on profit maximization by these investors often disregards the needs of renters, who are increasingly priced out of the housing market altogether. With wealthy investors holding such a significant portion of rental stock, the dream of affordable renting is slipping further from reach. Number 5. Short-term renting platforms' impact. One of the biggest disruptors in the UK rental market has been the rise of short-term renting platforms like Airbnb. These platforms have transformed how people rent out properties, but they've also contributed significantly to the housing crisis, particularly for those looking for long-term rental homes. In cities like London, Edinburgh, and Manchester, many property owners are choosing to list their homes on short-term rental platforms instead of offering them as long-term leases. The appeal of platforms like Airbnb is clear. Property owners can earn significantly higher rental income by renting out their homes to tourists and visitors for short stays compared to the more stable but lower income from long-term renters. As a result, entire apartment buildings or housing complexes are being converted into short-term rental units. This not only reduces the supply of homes available for long-term tenants, but also drives up overall rental prices, making it harder for local residents to find affordable housing. In high-demand tourist areas, the shortage of traditional rental properties is even more severe. Short-term rentals have become so common in some neighbourhoods that long-term residents are being displaced, unable to afford rising rent prices. This has sparked tensions between tourists, property owners, and local residents, creating a volatile rental market. While platforms like Airbnb offer a great deal of flexibility for travellers and property owners alike, their impact on the rental market has been profound. They have inflated rent prices, squeezed the availability of long-term homes, and contributed to the feeling that renting in many UK cities is becoming increasingly unaffordable. This shift is making it difficult for people to find stable housing in areas where they once could. Number 6. Inflated property prices. One of the driving factors behind the UK's housing crisis is the inflation of property prices over the past decade. The rise in property values has not only made home ownership unaffordable for many, but has also had a direct impact on the rental market. As property prices increase, landlords are forced to raise rents in order to cover their mortgage costs and achieve a return on their investments. This in turn pushes rental prices higher for tenants, making it even harder to secure affordable housing. For example, in areas like London, Bristol, and Cambridge, house prices have more than doubled in recent years, creating an affordability gap between what people earn and what they need to pay for housing. While wages have stayed relatively flat, property prices have skyrocketed, leaving many potential buyers unable to enter the market. As more people turn to renting as the only viable option, the demand for rental properties continues to grow, driving rents up further. The impact of inflated property prices is felt not only by first-time buyers, but also by renters who find themselves in a competitive market. As the value of properties increases, landlords and investors often raise rents to maintain their profit margins. Additionally, with more people choosing to rent rather than buy, rental demand continues to surge, creating a cycle that makes it difficult for individuals to find affordable housing. This trend of skyrocketing property values, combined with stagnant wages, creates a vicious cycle, where rent prices continue to climb, and renters are left struggling to keep up. With no signs of prices dropping anytime soon, many renters are feeling the pinch of an unaffordable housing market. Number 7. Government policy and housing reform. Another significant reason behind the rising difficulty of renting in the UK is the lack of effective government policies and housing reforms that could help tackle the crisis. While the government has made efforts to address housing issues, many argue that the reforms have been either too slow, ineffective, or focused on the wrong priorities. For example, recent policies aimed at increasing the supply of new homes have not kept up with demand, and the focus on home ownership has often overshadowed the need for affordable rental options. One of the main challenges is the lack of rent controls. In many other European countries, governments impose rent caps or rent stabilisation laws, which limit the amount by which landlords can raise rents. However, in the UK, rent increases are largely unregulated, allowing landlords to hike up prices as they see fit, often leaving tenants struggling to keep up. The absence of such protections means renters are at the mercy of the market, where landlords can demand higher rents due to high demand and limited supply. Another issue lies in the slow pace of social housing construction. Despite growing demand for affordable housing, the number of social housing units being built remains far below what is needed to meet demand. Many of the units that are being constructed are often not accessible to the people who need them most, with the criteria for social housing eligibility often being narrow. As a result, people who could benefit from affordable housing options are left on long waiting lists, and the private rental market becomes their only option, with high prices and limited availability. Without adequate government intervention or the introduction of more comprehensive policies, the UK's rental market will likely continue to suffer from inflated costs and increased competition, making it increasingly difficult for people to find stable, affordable housing. Number 8. Wage growth, stagnation. One of the most pressing issues contributing to the UK's rental crisis is the stagnation of wage growth over the past decade. While rent prices have steadily risen, wages for many workers have remained largely unchanged, leading to a growing affordability gap. In fact, the average salary increase has not kept pace with the rising costs of living, making it increasingly difficult for individuals and families to keep up with rising rent prices. For example, in cities like London, Manchester, and Birmingham, wages have largely remained stagnant, while rent has surged, often outpacing the rate of inflation. This mismatch between income and housing costs has placed renters in a precarious position. Many people are now forced to spend a larger percentage of their income on rent, leaving less for other essentials like food, transportation, and healthcare. In addition, many workers in the UK are employed in low-wage industries or on temporary contracts, which provide little financial security. The lack of stable, high-paying jobs means that even those who want to save for a deposit to buy their own home are finding it almost impossible to do so. As housing costs continue to rise, renters are often left with no choice but to take on more debt, cut back on essential spending, or simply move further away from their workplace, leading to longer commutes. The wage stagnation combined with inflated rent prices has created a situation where renters are increasingly squeezed financially. This lack of affordable housing in the face of stagnant wages is a major driver of the UK's housing crisis, making it nearly impossible for many to find a home they can comfortably afford. Number 9. Lack of regulation on rent increases. The absence of strong regulation around rent increases in the UK is another critical factor contributing to the housing crisis. Unlike many other countries, the UK does not have comprehensive rent control laws that protect tenants from steep rent hikes. This lack of regulation has left many renters vulnerable, as landlords are often free to increase rent by large amounts without any restrictions, regardless of market conditions or inflation. For example, in cities with high demand like London or Edinburgh, it is not uncommon for landlords to raise rents by as much as 10% or more in a single year. This dramatic rise in rent prices often comes with little warning, leaving tenants scrambling to meet higher costs. In some cases, renters are faced with the choice of either accepting the rent increase or being forced to move out, further adding to the stress of an already challenging market. The lack of regulation is especially problematic for those in the private rental sector, where there is no cap on how much rent can be increased during a tenancy. Unlike social housing, where rent is typically tied to income, private renters have no such protections, meaning they can be subject to frequent, unpredictable rent hikes. These increases often happen at a time when wages are not rising at the same rate, making it even harder for tenants to keep up. As rental prices continue to climb unchecked, many renters feel trapped in an unstable housing market, unsure whether they can afford to stay in their homes. The lack of strong regulations has exacerbated the UK's housing crisis, making it increasingly difficult for people to find long-term affordable housing. Number 10. Social housing shortage. The severe shortage of social housing is one of the key drivers of the UK's housing crisis, making it even harder for low-income individuals and families to secure stable and affordable housing. Over the years, the number of social housing units available has declined drastically, while the demand for them continues to grow. The gap between the need for affordable housing and what is available has become alarmingly wide, leaving many people in a precarious position. Currently, over 1.1 million people are on waiting lists for social housing in England alone, and the situation is even more dire in cities like London, where demand far outstrips supply. The problem is compounded by a lack of new affordable housing construction. Many local councils struggle to build enough social housing units due to budget cuts, land shortages, and rising building costs. This leaves renters with fewer options, forcing them to turn to the private rental market, which is often much more expensive and less secure. As a result, more and more people are trapped in overcrowded or substandard housing, with some even forced to live in temporary accommodations for years. Homelessness is on the rise, and people in need of affordable housing are left waiting for long periods before they are even considered for social housing. The shortage of social housing means that for many, renting in the private market is their only option, but at increasingly unaffordable prices. Without significant investment in social housing and a clear strategy to address the gap, the housing crisis will continue to worsen, leaving even more people without access to safe, affordable places to live. The social housing shortage is a critical issue that must be tackled if the UK is to resolve its growing rental crisis. The UK's housing crisis is no longer something we can ignore. With rents skyrocketing, housing supply shrinking, and wages stagnating, it's clear that the dream of affordable renting is slipping further out of reach for millions. Whether it's the impact of short-term rentals, the dominance of wealthy investors, or the lack of effective government intervention, the road to stable housing has never been more challenging. But the conversation doesn't end here. We want to hear from you. How has the rental market affected your life? Have you experienced the struggles of finding an affordable place to live? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We're here to listen and discuss. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. It's just one click, but it helps us create even more in-depth, well-researched content just like this. We put a lot of effort into bringing you the truth, and your support means everything. Thanks for watching.